What's up, everybody? It's me, Vash, still here again. I know this video's like late, like a day late and whatnot, not like late night. Yesterday was a really super busy day for me. I had a few things to do from early in the morning to late at night, and I didn't get home till like 10. So yesterday was a really busy day, and I just knocked out when I got home. So for today's video, as you guys started noticing the trend, today is going to be which do I prefer? And it's going to be two characters this time. One of them happens to be my personal favorite character. The other one is everybody else's favorite character. Once I tell you which two characters are, you're going to understand why I said that. So, uh, essentially, if you guys know JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, there's several main JoJos. So you got Jonathan Joestar, the one who started it all. And then you have Joseph Joestar, Jotaro Kujo, Josuke Kashikara, Jono, Jolene, then Johnny, and then Gappy currently. So those are all the JoJos. I think I missed one. I'm not sure. But anyway, those are all the JoJos. And my personal favorite JoJo is Jonathan Joestar, while everybody else's favorite character, Joseph Joestar. Yeah. So you guys understand now why I said which do I prefer? I prefer Jonathan Joestar over Joseph Joestar for several reasons. For one, Joseph was really the one, or Jonathan, I meant. Well, Joseph is Joseph is the one who everybody knows as being sarcastic, being kind of a jerk, but still kind of gentlemanly. But it's like he's really a big difference between Jonathan. Jonathan is the one that set the tone. The one that set the tone. The reason Dio exists, like for to kill the Joestars, like that's the whole reason Dio was there, to get rid of the Joestars, to get them out of wipe them from existence basically, so that he wouldn't have to deal with another Joestar like he did with Jonathan. So anyway, several reasons why I like Jonathan over Joseph. Reason number one, Jonathan is the more of a gentlemanly character, and that's what like I appreciate the most in Jonathan, the fact that he was a blank slate, brand new character, and this was the way that Araki took him. Be a gentleman, you know, and for two, he was very mindful of other people. Like when he fought Speedwagon's crew in Ogre Street, he could have easily killed any one of them with a single kick, but he didn't. He left them alive because even though he was fighting for his life, he was still thinking these men have families. There's someone who's going to miss them if I kill them here, you know. So that was his whole reasoning for leaving Speedwagon and his crew alive, And then Speedwagon said, I respect him. You don't lay a finger on him, okay? So like that's reason number two why I like Jonathan over Joseph. Reason number three, Jonathan is a little bit more calculating. He doesn't take unnecessary risks unless it's absolutely possible to be able to pull off with that risk. Like in the final battle against Dio, with the first final battle against Dio, where he heats up that steak and he jabs Dio through his chest and went out with the steak, and essentially he wasn't sure that he was going to survive that, and that's what I found most admirable about him, is that in order to save everybody else, he knew he had to put himself at risk to survive. So that's what happened. Like that was the end result. He realized, you know what, I probably don't have much time to live, so screw it. Let's go full force with this. You know? So like that was after like the burnt down mansion and whatnot, like when Dio had revived Bruford and I can't remember the other guy's name. Oh well. It'll come to me sometime later. Anyway, so Bruford and Tarkus, when Dio revived Bruford and Tarkus, that it was immediately after those two matches, where he essentially heats up and artificially creates Hamon that way, and that's how he thinks he defeated Dio and whatnot. Four or five, was this reason number 4 or 5? I don't remember. Uh, he put everybody else's life above his. So when Dio had found him on the ship with while he was on his honeymoon with Arena, you know, that he had really felt that sense of danger, and instead of endangering all the other guests, he had he had taken it upon himself to stop the vampires that were already there, and wipe them out, and personally go after Dio himself. So self-sacrifice. That's a really big one that I've decided, like, self-sacrifice is one of the biggest reasons why Jonathan is my favorite JoJo. Because honestly, like, if you look at any of the other JoJos, there isn't really that much of a self-sacrifice with them. Like, like, you could say for like Josuke, his self-sacrifice was more or less he was willing to sacrifice himself for his family, but for his family and friends. But that's as far as his self-sacrifice goes. Like, Jonathan's was an entire crew, an entire ship of people who he didn't even know, and he decided to save them over himself. So that's what I would consider self-sacrifice over, sacrificing your life for protecting your friends or family, because, like, that's understandable. People will do that. So that's why I prefer Jonathan over Joseph. Joseph, in his own right, is a good character. More when he's old Joseph in part 3 over young Joseph, which is going to be an entirely different video. But for this video, I'm focusing on Joseph as a whole. So young Joseph, more conniving, more calculating, jerk kind of person. Like, he looks just like Jonathan and whatnot. They said it several times. It's just he doesn't have the same personality as Jonathan had. And I know, like, there's several contributing factors. Like, he wasn't raised by his parents were absent. For one, his dad is dead. His mom ran away, and he was raised by his grandmother Irina. So, like, yeah, I understand why if, like, how someone's brought up and, like, who's around them can affect the way they are when they grow up. But, like, Joseph, he had it. I'm gonna say he had it relatively easy. He didn't really have too much trouble with his life and whatnot. Uh, he was an only child. He has that going for him and whatnot. But as he gets older, he really begins to, like, understand a little bit better. Like, he's conniving and whatnot, and like, he's very calculative, and he could even guess what people are gonna say next sometimes. But what really sets Joseph aside from, like, the other JoJos is the fact that he's not like them, in the sense that he doesn't do things, like, because he wants to. He doesn't because he has to. Like, for Jotaro, the only thing that forced him to go to Egypt was that his mom was afflicted by the stand sickness. She wasn't able to control the stand like he was. That was Jotaro. And for Josuke, it was the fact that his entire town was in trouble, so he had to do it. He had to, like, save the town, risk his life and whatnot, and his friends had to risk their lives too. Uh, Basically, like, Jonathan wanted to do everything he did. He wanted to, and that's, like, honestly, what I think sets him aside from everybody else. Like, the only reason Joseph wanted to learn to increase his Hamon was so that he could beat Caesar, and everybody knows that. And, like, I think that's, like, one of the biggest things that irks me about Joseph, is the fact that he was more focused on, like, bettering himself to prove that he's better than someone else, whereas Jonathan was bettering himself in order to save others. So, like, that's really, like, yeah, Joseph was able to better himself and save others too, but it was more as a side effect to bettering himself to be better than other people. And, like, older Joseph, like, he understands, like, how he was wrong when he was a kid and whatnot, and, like, that's understandable. Like, everybody, hindsight is 2020. Everybody understands things better when they're older than versus when they were younger. And It's just some things, some things like age does bring about, but it's just the fact that Jonathan was able to understand it, and he was able to realize some things earlier than Joseph was. So I think that's what really, like, I connect with Jonathan in that sense, that like, um I would risk myself to save like a bunch of strangers if it was down to my life versus the life of 100 people. I'd rather only one person die and the other 100 save. So I would obviously give myself up for that and whatnot. Like, everybody has that will to live and whatnot, but sometimes people just come down to that choice, and they would rather 100 lives who have infinite potential live rather than one life who has fulfilled their potential, who has fulfilled their purpose in life. So that's where I believe. Like, that's why I connect with Jonathan over Joseph, and honestly, that's why I prefer Jonathan over Joseph. So that's the end of the video. That's all. What all I can say. Like, I've read part one and part two of JoJo, and I've also watched part one and part two of JoJo, and I've always made comparisons between Jonathan and Joseph, and like, it's not just between Jonathan and Joseph. Like, with all the JoJos and whatnot, see how each person is their own person, but it's just Joseph, young Joseph at least, he was a terrible. I'm not gonna say he was a terrible person or a terrible character. Like, he's great. It's just he's he's not an example that he's not the same example that Jonathan would be, and that's what I'm trying to get at. There are just some people better fit to be an example over others. Anyway, that's the end of this video. Next week, or this Saturday, I mean, I'll upload another video. I'm gonna try not to be late this time, but I can never make any promises. There are certain things that just happen because they happen. Sometimes life gets in the way and whatnot, but you know, it's normal. Anyway, this will be Vash Steel signing out, and remember, this too shall pass.